My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 38, I never imagined the day I read my parents' will would carve the deepest wound of my life. I stood in their dim Ohio living room, clutching a document that left everything: house, savings, even Mom's heirloom jewelry to my brother Ethan. Me? The daughter who gave up a fashion design scholarship to nurse Mom through her stroke? Not a single mention. Mom's words still haunt me. Ethan is the family's future. My heart shattered. I'd sacrificed my dreams, paid their bills, stayed up nights caring for them, yet they chose him. The brother who chased basketballs instead of being there when Mom was at her weakest. When I stood on the Forbes stage years later, their silence screamed louder than any apology. Before I share what made them face their mistake, drop a comment with where you're watching from and hit like if your family ever made you feel invisible. I grew up in a small Ohio town, in a 2-story house with a white picket fence that looked like a postcard. But behind the family photos with forced smiles, cracks ran deep. My parents, John and Margaret, were a construction engineer and a bank clerk, comfortable enough to afford what mattered to them, but for me, it was always scraps. I remember Christmas at 14, Ethan unwrapping shiny new Nike basketball shoes while I got Mom's old sweater. Ethan needs motivation to be a star, Dad said, as if my dress sketches were childish scribbles. Each time, I learned to swallow the hurt, but my heart kept breaking. Only Grandma Ellen saw me. Summers at her house, I'd sketch dresses on her porch, and she'd say, "Sarah, you've got a spark. Don't let anyone dim it." Her words were a lifeline. But back home, I faded into shadows. My parents cheered at every one of Ethan's games, while my state design award got a glance and a "fashion won't pay the bills." I wondered, do I even belong in this family? The day I found the will, my world collapsed. I thought I was the devoted daughter, but to them, I was nothing. Ethan, who barely called Mom, got everything because his future shines. Pain and anger surged. I knew I had to act. What would you do when family turns their back? Share below, and let's walk this journey from darkness to light. Rewind to when I still believed effort would make them see my worth. I was 22, summer heat heavy when Mom had her stroke. I gave up a New York fashion design scholarship to stay in Ohio, tending to her through endless hospital nights. My dress sketches gathered dust. Ethan, 17, was busy with basketball tournaments, rarely visiting. Yet Mom and Dad called him our pride. I swallowed the sting, hoping my sacrifice would matter.
Our white-fenced house hid the truth. Dad always at construction sites, and Mom managing family finances, had enough for Ethan's every need: college tuition, a campus apartment. Me? I worked part-time at a local boutique, covering electric bills and leftover medical costs. Ethan wasn't cruel, just oblivious, accepting their gifts without question. But every check I wrote for them chipped away at me. Why did I have to try twice as hard for a glance? I fought to be seen. Straight A's, a state fashion design win at 18. I brought home a trophy, hoping for pride. Dad barely looked up. Nice, but help Ethan study. He's got a big test. Mom added, "Fashion's a hobby, Sarah. Ethan's the one who will make us proud." I felt like a ghost, existing only to prop up his spotlight. Grandma Ellen was my beacon. At her suburban cottage, I'd draw dresses, and she'd beam. "Sarah, you're gifted. Don't let them make you small." She'd share stories of designers like Coco Chanel, urging me to hold my fire. Those summers kept me going, but home was a void where I was unseen. By my late 20s, I was the family's backbone, With Mom recovering, I paid utilities and hospital balances, while Ethan lived carefree at college, all expenses covered. Each sacrifice made me question, am I enough? The will's betrayal answered that, but it also lit a spark, one that would lead me to a stage where even my parents couldn't ignore me. By my 30s, my parents leaned on me more. They call me the responsible one, not with pride, but as if it was my default setting. I paid their mortgage, bought groceries, even fixed the leaking roof. Meanwhile, Ethan jetted around with his basketball team, posting radiant Instagram smiles. At family gatherings, Mom and Dad bragged. Ethan's going pro. I sat there, forcing a smile, my hand clutching an old dress sketch in my pocket. Did they ever see me as more than their bill payer? Once, I tried telling Mom about my fashion dreams. I shared my idea for a brand inspired by overlooked women. She gave a thin laugh. Sarah, be realistic. Fashion's unstable. Ethan's the one with a solid future. Her words cut like a blade. That night, staring in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. Who was this woman? A devoted daughter, or just the family's ATM? My fingers traced the faded lines of a dress sketch. Could I ever live for me? The day I found the will in Dad's desk drawer, my heart stopped. I thought my sacrifices, giving up my design scholarship, nursing Mom, paying their bills, would make them see me. But that paper, with their scrawled signatures, said otherwise. Everything, house, savings, land, went to Ethan. Not one word about me. Mom's voice echoed, Ethan is the family's future. In their cold living room, my world crumbled. I had to confront them. Would they hear me, or would I always be a shadow?
I waited until dinner, when Mom and Dad sat at the table. Ethan, 33, was out with friends, as usual, unbothered by family. My hand shook as I placed the will on the table. Why? I asked, voice cracking. Dad, John, looked up from his steak, annoyed like I was an interruption. Mom, Margaret, glanced at the paper, then at me with irritation. Sarah, why are you digging? She snapped. This is our plan. Ethan deserves it. He'll carry the family forward. I fought to stay calm. I paid the mortgage, cared for Mom, gave up my dreams. Don't I deserve something? Dad waved a hand, dismissive. Sarah, don't be selfish. Ethan needs this to build his future. You've always managed, haven't you? His words sliced. Managed? I'd carried this family on my back. I pressed on. Ethan wasn't even here when Mom was sick, I said, voice rising. He was busy with basketball, with friends. I did everything. Mom cut me off, her tone icy. Ethan has big potential. You don't get it, Sarah. Your fashion is just a hobby. Think of the family. I stood frozen, erased. They didn't just favor Ethan, they'd made me worthless. I turned away, tears burning, but I wouldn't let them see. I'd given my life, and they called it selfish? In the days that followed, anger and pain consumed me. I still sent mortgage payments, bought groceries, trapped by habit. But each bank transfer twisted my gut. I stared at my faded dress sketch, tucked in a corner. My dream, what Grandma Ellen called my spark, was ash. At the boutique, I sold dresses I didn't design, hearing customers praise. Each compliment stung, a reminder of what I'd lost. Was I living or just surviving for them? My parents noticed my silence. One night, Mom called. Sarah, what's wrong? Are you mad? I wanted to scream, to spill my pain, but I only said, I'm fine. I feared they'd call me selfish again. Meanwhile, Ethan posted on Instagram grinning in a new basketball jersey funded by them. A friend commented, "Your family's awesome." I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping. Awesome? When I was just the one bankrolling his spotlight? I started noticing how others saw our family. Neighbors, friends, all praised Ethan as the star, the pride. No one knew I'd held this together. Once our neighbor Linda asked, "Sarah, why didn't you study fashion? You're talented." I forced a smile. "I'm busy with family." Her eyes held pity, seeing what I couldn't admit. Society's expectations of a dutiful daughter crushed me. I was trapped, not just by my parents, but by invisible standards. The pain smoldered like a slow-burning fire. I clung to Grandma Ellen's words, "Don't let anyone dim your spark." But that spark felt so faint now. One night, I stared into the mirror again. The woman staring back looked exhausted, her eyes dulled by sleepless nights. "Who are you?" I whispered. "A devoted daughter? Or just a sacrifice for someone else's shine?" I grabbed my phone, opened the banking app, and stared at the money ready to send to my parents. My finger hovered over transfer. For the first time, I wondered, what if I stopped? Could I step out of this darkness?
That night, my finger lingered over the transfer button. The question echoed, what happens if I stop? I took a deep breath and hit cancel. For the first time in years, I didn't send the money. Relief mixed with fear. I'd carried my family for so long, but now I wanted to live for me. I knew this choice would change everything, but I didn't expect the storm it would unleash. Was I ready for the fallout? A month later, my phone buzzed at midnight. A text from Mom. No greeting, no concern. "Mortgage is due. Why haven't you sent it?" My heart pounded. Not one thank you for years of bills paid. Not one question about me. I typed back, "I'm done paying." 4 words, but they felt like an earthquake. I waited for her call, for some explanation, but only silence followed. That silence was scarier than any scolding. The next morning, the storm hit. Mom called, her voice sharp. "Sarah, what do you think you're doing? Abandoning your family?" I tried to explain. "I've paid for everything too long. I need to live for me." She cut me off. "You're selfish. Ethan's building his career and you turn your back on us?" I froze. Ethan, caught up in basketball and parties, was still her hero. I wanted to scream that he never pitched in a dime, but I hung up, hands shaking. My heart felt torn apart. Then the rumors spread. My parents told neighbors I'd abandoned them. Linda, who once praised my designs, now eyed me with doubt as I passed by. At the grocery store, Mrs. Carter, Mom's friend, whispered to someone, "Sarah stopped paying their mortgage. Shameful." I ducked my head, pretending not to hear, but each word stabbed. The community I thought might understand turned on me. I felt like the whole town was judging me, branding me a traitor instead of the one who gave everything. Back in my small apartment, after long shifts at the boutique, I opened Instagram. Ethan had posted, him on the court, beaming in a new jersey Mom and Dad bought. Comments gushed, family star. No one knew I'd paid to fix the roof so he had a home to visit. No one knew I stayed up late ensuring Mom's meds were on time. I felt like I was vanishing, a shadow no one saw. The smoldering pain flared into rage. I recalled Grandma Ellen's words, "You have your own spark," but it was buried under criticism. One day, a bank letter arrived. The family's joint account, where I used to send money, was drained. Dad called, voice tense, "Sarah, we need you. The house is at risk." Instinct urged me to help, but then I remembered the will, their selfish label. I said, "You chose Ethan. Let him handle it."
Those words broke a wall inside me. I felt free, but terrified. I'd cut the tether, but what now? The town kept judging. At a parent-teacher event for my old school, I overheard Mom tell people, "Sarah doesn't care about family anymore." Eyes turned to me, accusing. I wanted to shout the truth, that I'd paid every bill while Ethan played ball. But I stayed silent, knowing they wouldn't believe me. The isolation choked me. At home, in the dark, I clutched an old dress sketch. Its faded lines mocked my forgotten dreams. Was I worth living for? One evening, I ran into Linda at the grocery store. She took my hand and whispered, "Sarah, I know what you did for them. Don't let them define you." Her words were a faint light. I thought of Grandma Ellen, of sketches that once fueled my dreams. In a corner of my apartment, I found a dress I'd sewn long ago, never worn. My fingers traced its stitches and a small flame flickered inside. Could I reclaim my spark? I opened my laptop, typed fashion startup. An idea sparked. If my parents couldn't see me, I'd make the world see me. But did I have the courage to step forward? That night, as I typed fashion startup into my laptop, a small fire ignited inside me. Grandma Ellen's words echoed, "Sarah, you have your own spark. Don't let anyone dim it." I stared at my old dress sketch, its faded lines whispering that my dream wasn't dead. I'd let my parents, the town, and even myself bury it for too long. But if I dared to rise, could I make the world see me? The thought was a lightning bolt, and I knew it was time to change. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, though. I thought back to high school, 17 years old, standing in design class with my teacher, Miss Harper. She held my dress sketch, eyes gleaming. "Sarah, you have a rare artist's eye. These aren't just dresses, they're stories for the women who wear them." I dreamed of becoming a designer, creating collections about strong, overlooked women like me. But then Mom's stroke hit, and I gave up my New York scholarship to stay in Ohio. The memory stung, but it also sparked something. My talent hadn't vanished. It was buried under bills and criticism. I decided to act. With meager savings from the boutique, I bought a secondhand sewing machine and a few yards of fabric. I started remaking that dress from my old sketch, a sleek black silk gown, simple yet elegant, inspired by the days I felt invisible. Each stitch was a declaration. I'm no longer a shadow. I worked after late shifts in my tiny apartment under a dim lamp. Those nights I felt alive again, as if Grandma's spark was guiding me. I created an Instagram account, Shadow to Light Designs. My first post, the black dress on a wooden table, captioned, "For those who've been overlooked." I expected little, just a test. But by morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Dozens of likes, comments from strangers. "This dress tells my story." A woman, Jane, messaged, "My family ignored me too. I want this dress to remind me I'm enough." Reading her words, tears fell. I wasn't alone. Orders trickled in, just a few dresses, but each carried my story and those of other women. I worked relentlessly, sewing at night, selling by day. One day I met Amy, a local fashion investor, at a coffee shop. She saw me sketching on a napkin and asked, "What's this?" I told her about Shadow to Light, dresses for women unseen. Amy smiled. She said, "I want to invest. You've got vision." Her words stunned me. Me, the one Mom called unrealistic, trusted by an investor? With Amy's funding, I opened a small Ohio studio. I hired 2 women, both overlooked by their families. We worked day and night on my first collection, from darkness to light. Each dress bore an emotion's name.
resilient, unseen, reborn. I posted it on Instagram and it went viral. Fashion bloggers shared it, calling me a storyteller in fabric. A local paper wrote, "Sarah Mitchell turns pain into art." My heart raced. I was doing what I thought impossible. Success didn't dull the pain. One evening, Dad texted, "Sarah, the house is facing foreclosure. Can't you help?" Guilt surged. I remembered years of paying bills, the will that gave Ethan everything. Ethan, still posting on Instagram, traveling with his team, oblivious to family. I replied, "I've done enough." Hanging up, I cried. I didn't want to abandon them, but I couldn't return to being their shadow. The town's view of me shifted. Linda, the neighbor who doubted me, visited my studio and bought a dress. She said, "I was wrong to believe your mom. You're this town's pride." Her words soothed old wounds, but my parents stayed silent. I heard they told people I was too busy for family. The words cut, but I no longer let them define me. I had my spark, and I was shining. One day, an email arrived from a Chicago fashion event. "We invite Shadow to Light Designs to showcase your collection." I reread it, disbelieving. Chicago, where I dreamed of going as a 17-year-old with sketches. I said yes, but fear gnawed. Could I compete with big designers? I looked at my first sketch, now framed on my studio wall. It reminded me of my journey from darkness to light. I had to step up, not just for me, but for the women who believed in me. Could I face my family's judgment and the world's scrutiny?
I stood backstage at the Chicago fashion show, heart pounding. The stage lights blazed, but the shadow of years spent overlooked clung to me. Today, June 19th, 2025, my Shadow to Light Designs would debut its first collection, From Darkness to Light. I wore the black silk gown from my old sketch, its elegant lines telling my story, a story of someone once invisible. When the host called my name, I took a deep breath and stepped out. Would the world see my spark, or would I sink back into darkness? The runway dazzled, hundreds of eyes watching under the lights, fashion journalists, women like me who'd been ignored by family. I stepped forward, voice steady through the mic. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, and this collection is for those who've been overlooked. Each dress is a story of finding your own light." The crowd applauded, and a surge of strength rose in me. The dresses, resilient, unseen, reborn, glided down the runway, each one speaking for a woman who'd overcome darkness. As the final dress appeared, the audience stood, their applause like thunder. I bowed, tears shimmering, not from pain, but because I'd done it. After the show, social media exploded. Shadow to Light Designs hit thousands of followers. A Vogue post read, "Sarah Mitchell, from forgotten daughter to inspiring designer." Comments flooded in. "She speaks for me. The unseen dress is my life." My heart raced. This community, strangers online, saw me, validated me, in ways my parents never had. A journalist asked post-show, "What drove this collection?" I smiled, voice firm. "I was invisible to my family. This collection is how I proved them wrong." The words were a quiet declaration, no shouting needed, but they echoed. I knew news of the show would reach my parents. I'd sent them tickets, not expecting them to come, but a part of me still hoped. Scanning the crowd, I saw Grandma Ellen in the front row, eyes shining with pride, but no mom or dad. After the show, Mom texted, "Congrats, Sarah. Can you call? The house still needs you." The old ache returned. They still saw me as their ATM, even as I stood at my peak. I didn't reply. This wasn't the time to return to darkness. That evening at the post-show reception, investors, journalists, and clients surrounded me. Amy, my first investor, raised a glass. "Sarah, you've turned pain into art." A woman, Lisa, took my hand, sharing how she bought the resilient dress to honor her journey past a doubting family. I listened, tears welling, but smiled. I was no longer Ethan's shadow. I was Sarah Mitchell, a designer the world saw. Yet the pain lingered. I recalled Mom calling me selfish, the rumors they spread. This success was my answer, but did I need their approval? The next day, a Forbes article dropped. Sarah Mitchell, From Darkness to Light, a self-made designer's triumph. It detailed my journey, paying family bills, building shadow to light, the will that gave Ethan everything because his future shone. The internet erupted. One comment, her parents suck for ignoring her. Another, Sarah's an icon for overlooked women. I read, torn between pride and pain. I didn't want my parents vilified, but they needed to face the cost of their favoritism. Linda, my old neighbor, called. "Sarah, the town's buzzing about you," she said. "Your mom's telling folks you're too busy for family, but now everyone knows the truth. You're our pride." Her words soothed, but also reminded me my parents hadn't changed. Ethan, meanwhile, posted on Instagram, grinning in a new basketball jersey, oblivious to the family drama. He remained carefree, living in the glow my parents gave him, never questioning. I didn't blame him, but I couldn't keep living for their expectations. A week later, I was invited to a Chicago talk show. The host asked, "Sarah, what pushed you to rise above it all?" I took a breath, looked into the camera. I thought I needed my family's validation, but I realized my light doesn't come from them. It comes from me. The crowd cheered, and I felt my voice truly reclaimed. I didn't name my parents, but my words were a silent arrow, piercing the darkness of the years they overlooked me. Back in Ohio, I heard my parents watched the talk show. They didn't reach out, but Linda said Mom looked different seeing me on TV. I didn't know their thoughts, but something shifted in me. I no longer craved their validation. My success, the crowd's applause, the dresses telling my story, that was my light. Yet a question lingered. If my parents faced me now, what would I say? Was I ready to let them into their light, or would I keep them at a distance forever? A week after the Chicago fashion show, Dad texted, "Sarah, we need to talk. Can we meet at the house?" My heart raced. Today, June 19th, 2025, I'd stood on stages, celebrated by Forbes and roaring crowds. But my parents, who called me selfish, who left everything to Ethan in their will, now wanted to face me. I recalled my talk show words. My light doesn't come from them. Could I let them into that light, or would I always hold them at arm's length? I drove to the 2-story Ohio house, its white picket fence now faded like my painful memories. Mom and Dad sat in the heavy air of the living room. Ethan, 33, was absent, off with his basketball team, as usual, basking in the glow they gave him. I stood there, wearing the black silk gown from Darkness to Light, a symbol of my triumph. Mom, Margaret, looked at me, eyes red. "Sarah, we saw you on TV." Dad, John, added, voice hesitant, "You did well." I waited, but no apology came.
Just awkwardness. I took a breath, asking the question I'd held for years. Why wasn't I in the will? I paid bills, cared for Mom, gave up my dreams. Why did Ethan get everything? Mom bowed her head, voice shaky. "We didn't see you, Sarah. We thought Ethan was the future because—" She trailed off, unable to justify. Dad stepped in. "He's our son, our pride. We were wrong." Their words echoed my own realization. They didn't see me. But now, standing as a celebrated designer, those words didn't hurt like before. They were just truth. I responded, voice steady, "I lived in Ethan's shadow too long, but I don't need your light anymore. I found my own." Mom sobbed. Dad gripped her hand, looking smaller than ever. They apologized. "We were wrong to choose Ethan. We didn't see your strength." The late apology stung my heart. I remembered years of paying bills, the rumors they spread, the nights I cried alone. But I also heard Grandma Ellen, "Don't let anyone dim your spark." I set a boundary. "I forgive you," I said, "but I can't go back to how it was. I need to live for me, not your expectations." I pulled out a gift, the resilient dress from my collection, for Mom. "This is part of me, but I'm not paying bills anymore." Mom clutched the dress, tears falling. Dad nodded, as if truly seeing me for the first time. A family friend recorded the encounter, posting it online with the caption, "Sarah Mitchell forgives but doesn't forget." The video went viral, and the internet roared. "She's so strong. Her parents need to learn from her." I didn't want more criticism of them, but the truth was out. The next day, I returned to my Ohio studio. My employees, women once overlooked, greeted me with smiles. "You did it, Sarah," one said. I looked at my first sketch, framed on the wall, a symbol of my journey. The pain that once made me want to quit had become my strength. I thought of Ethan, still carefree in his basketball life, unaware of the family drama. I didn't resent him. He was a product of their favoritism, not its cause. But I knew I couldn't live for anyone's expectations anymore. Linda stopped by, holding a printed Forbes article. "The town's proud of you," she said. "Your mom said you gave her a dress. She wore it yesterday. Looked different." I smiled, but said nothing. Mom wearing the dress was a small sign of change, but I didn't pin hopes on it. I'd learned my light didn't depend on them. I opened Instagram, finding thousands of messages from women worldwide. "You inspire me. I'm starting over because of you." Each was a lantern lighting my path. An email from a major New York fashion brand landed in my inbox, offering a partnership to take shadow to light designs nationwide. My heart raced. This was the dream I abandoned at 22, now real. Yet an old question echoed. If my parents want to get close again, how will I open my heart? I knew my journey wasn't over. Forgiving was a step, but setting boundaries was my true strength. Could I hold on to my light even if they tried to step into it? In my small Ohio studio, early summer sunlight of June 19th, 2025, spilled through the window, illuminating my first dress sketch on the wall. That black silk gown, once a faded dream, now symbolized my path from darkness to light. After confronting my parents, a strange peace settled in. I'd forgiven, not for them, but to release my pain. I'd set boundaries, and for the first time, I lived for me. But would this light endure, or would old shadows creep back? The studio was my second home. My employees, women once overlooked like me, worked at sewing machines, sharing dreams. I watched them, smiling. Shadow to Light Designs wasn't just a business. It was where we reclaimed our worth. The From Darkness to Light collection sold out, and the New York deal was being finalized. Messages poured in from customers. The resilient dress made me believe in myself. Each word was a lantern, lighting my way. I started donating to a local organization for overlooked women in Ohio, naming it Ellen's Light, after Grandma Ellen, who always saw my spark. At the funds launch, I spoke to a small crowd. Your value doesn't need anyone's approval. It's in you. They applauded, and I felt Grandma smiling somewhere.
I didn't need grand spotlight moments, just these, where I helped others find their light. My parents were changing, slowly. Linda said Mom often wore the resilient dress I gave her, and Dad joined a community group to learn about listening to women. They didn't call often, but when they did, their voices softened. Once, Mom texted, "Sarah, I'm proud of you." I read it, feeling a flicker of warmth, but didn't rush to reply. I'd forgiven, but I hadn't forgotten. I kept my distance, not out of anger, but to protect my light. Ethan stayed Ethan, carefree, lost in basketball. He texted after the Forbes article, "You're amazing, Sarah." I smiled, replying briefly, "Thanks, Ethan." I didn't resent him. He didn't choose their favoritism, but I chose not to live in his shadow. I heard he was trying coaching, and my parents weren't funding him like before. Maybe they were learning to let him stand on his own. Back in my small apartment, once a place of tears over rumors and the will, I found peace. I opened a drawer, pulling out that old dress sketch. Its faded lines now told a new story, not of loss, but of triumph. I hung it by the window, sunlight streaming through. I no longer hated my parents or feared the town's judgment. I'd found my worth, and it didn't depend on anyone. One evening, I sat on my porch, crickets humming. I thought of Grandma Ellen, of summers sketching by her side. I grabbed my phone, posting on Instagram, "Today, I choose peace. What have you chosen for your light?" I hit send, leaning back. My phone buzzed with comments. "You inspire me. I'm starting over." I smiled, feeling a deep stillness. My journey didn't end on Chicago's runway or in Forbes. It ended here, in the moment I knew I was enough. I thought of my parents, Ethan, the years I felt unworthy. I no longer needed them to say, "We see you." I saw myself. That was my greatest victory. But a question lingered. I'd found my light. What about you? Will you dare to shed your darkness and step into your own? In my Ohio studio, late afternoon sun of June 19, 2025, glowed on my first sketch. Today, I signed the New York deal, launching shadow to light designs nationwide. From the girl who paid family bills, overlooked in my parents' will, I became Sarah Mitchell, inspiring through dresses that tell stories. But this journey isn't just mine. It's a reminder that we all have a spark waiting to shine. I think back to the years in darkness when I believed my worth hinged on my parents' approval. Their will, leaving everything to my brother Ethan, once made me feel invisible. But I reclaimed my dream through that black silk dress, through stitches sewn in the dead of night. Grandma Ellen, who always said, "You have your own spark," feels like she's here, smiling. I want you, everyone watching, to find that spark in yourselves. I'm calling you to act. Find what you love, no matter how small. A dress, a poem, a dream. It's still waiting. Don't let anyone say you're not enough. I think of Ellen's Light, my fund helping overlooked women rise. A girl messaged me on Instagram, "I started a small tailoring shop because of you, Sarah." Reading that, my heart warmed. Those small steps are light, and you can start too, like I did with a faded sketch. My parents are changing, slowly. Mom wears the resilient dress I gave her. Dad's learning to listen to women in a community group. Last week, they texted, "Sarah, we're proud." I replied briefly, not rushing to open my heart. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace. Ethan, still carefree, is now a basketball coach. He texted, "You're awesome, Sarah." I smiled, no longer shadowed by his glow. I stepped out of darkness, not with anger, but with love for myself. I stand, walking to the studio porch, gazing at Ohio's radiant sky. I remember nights crying over rumors, over the will, but now I feel only stillness. I film a video for Instagram saying, "You don't need anyone to validate your worth. Find your spark and shine." I post it, feeling a long chapter close. My journey didn't end on Chicago's runway or in Forbes. It's in these moments I know I'm enough, and I want you to feel that too. Looking at the sky, I wonder, are you ready? What's holding you back? A judgment, a fear, a dream you forgot? Share your story in the comments and tell me, what will you do to step into your own light?